Hey guys, it's Tom here from Pro Direct Running, and in this video I'm going to be giving you a first look and initial review of one of the most hotly anticipated running shoes of the entire year. It's the Nike Alphafly 2 Proto edition. Let's get into it. Before we get cracking, if you are new around here and you're looking forward to today's video, make sure to hit that subscribe button, drop us a like and turn your bell notifications on so you never miss a future upload. With that out of the way, let's dive straight into the video. So the latest in road racing innovation is here from the wizards over at Nike, and it's my job to tell you what's new with the second iteration of one of the most iconic running shoes of all time. First up, from a purely aesthetic standpoint, I am a sucker for a crisp white colorway at the best of times, but the Proto phenomenon, which started with the initial limited drop of the Vaporfly Next Percent 2 and was then followed up with the Streakfly and now the Alphafly 2, definitely creates some added hype around these releases, but in my opinion is also a great look for running culture by creating highly desirable yet still pinnacle performance focused collectibles. But do not fear, this particular pair, which I am privileged to have in my possession, will not be sat collecting dust in a glass cabinet somewhere. I fully intend on wearing them, loving them, and most probably meticulously cleaning them with baby wipes after every single run. The Alphafly 2 features the same off-centered Nike swoosh, which is visible on the carbon fiber fly plate, orange detail to the pull tab on the tongue of the shoe, and no doubt my favorite touch of all, the sample number, which you can find on the World Athletics shoe compliancy list, situated on the rear portion on the medial side of the midsole. Now, the OG Alphafly did prove slightly more polarizing than the Vaporfly, in part due to its refined versatility and definite preference to longer road races such as the half and full marathon. The Alphafly 2 shares many of these same components on paper, but there are in fact a considerable amount of tweaks and updates to the shoe which make it an even more purpose-driven machine. Starting with some of the more obvious visual changes, the heel of the Alphafly 2 has now been squared off, similar to what we saw on the recently released Pegasus 39. Now, I don't have any exact information directly from Nike on their reasoning behind this, but generally speaking, having a wider base at the rear portion of the shoe, in contrast to the fin type shape that we found on the OG Alphafly and indeed the Vaporfly, is definitely going to create a wider overall base and therefore improve inherent stability. The other most notable tweak to the midsole comes from the Air Zoom pods that you can find in the forefoot. The key characteristic that stands the Alphafly apart from any other super shoe on the market, the Air Zoom pods found on the Alphafly 2 now feature a slither of ZoomX foam underneath, meaning that they are now encased in a lovely little ZoomX sandwich. The whole purpose of this is to create a softer, smoother and generally more pleasant landing, whilst also enhancing that transition from rear foot to toe off throughout your gait cycle. We'll get into my first run impressions of the shoe very shortly, but let me just say right off the bat that this update works wonders. Now, technically speaking, the upper on the Alphafly 2 is the same atom knit found on the OG. However, upon closer inspection, getting the magnifying glass out, and indeed upon lacing up the Alphafly 2 for the first time, it is evident to me that the structure and configuration is slightly different. The material itself may be identical, but we have a tighter knit here in comparison to the wholly and more airy variant found on the outgoing model. I don't believe that this variant will in any way negatively impact things like durability and breathability, but for me it is a very welcome change for the extra integrity and support it seems to add to the midfoot. Aside from that, we have the exact same serrated laces that I'm personally a big fan of and always seem to stay locked in place, but we do have a subtly different lacing system. The laces now thread through these little bits of fabric, not too dissimilar to flywire, and although again I don't have anything official from Nike on this, I haven't found any negatives of it, and for me it just further enhances the lockdown that you're able to achieve. We do also now have a far more exaggerated and robust pull tab situated at the top of the eyelet chain connected to the tongue. One of the only intermittent issues that I did experience with the original Alphafly was some excess pressure applied to the top of the foot from the laces. And although it's still very early days, the new pull tab found on the Alphafly 2 definitely seems to go some way to negating this issue. Finally, the heel counter also gets an upgrade on the Alphafly 2 and is now overall softer, more cushioned and a little bit more comfortable around the Achilles and ankle. Last but not least, and arguably where some of the most impactful changes are present, let's take a look at the outsole. The main detail that's impossible to avoid when comparing the two iterations to each other is the increased net base or width of the outsole. Sound like a broken record here, but again, no exact measurements from Nike on this, but from third-party estimates, we're able to ascertain there may be as much as a 10mm difference in width. 10mm may not sound like a big deal, but when it comes to improving overall stability, as well as going some way to rectify the arch issue that some people have with the contouring of the original Alphafly, I think that this is a real winner. When it comes to the outsole coverage itself, that extra bit of ZoomX foam found under the Air Zoom pods that we mentioned earlier has enabled Nike to decrease the thickness of the rubber coverage on the forefoot area of the shoe and also implement cutouts to this rubber, which has proved incredibly popular across the board on other recent super shoe releases. Traction and durability should still be excellent here for super shoe standards, whilst keeping that weight down. At the rear of the shoe, we now have a fairly huge decoupled groove, exposing more of that carbon fiber fly plate than ever before. Essentially, a decoupled groove or split heel design is there to provide a little bit more shock absorption, reduce impact upon landing, and create a more stable and pleasant experience for those landing more towards the heel during their stride. Obviously, having a chunk of the midsole cut out here also helps to save those precious grams. Speaking of grams, I'll tell you straight up, the Alphafly 2 has increased weight, but it is very minimal and probably due to the tweaks on the upper, the wider base, and overall more volume of ZoomX foam underfoot, so I'd say that's a pretty fair trade-off. The UK men's size 8, which I have in my hand right here, came in at about 225 grams on the scales, whereas the recent Ekiden release of the original Alphafly came in at about 210. Okay, so with all of the techie updates out of the way, let's dive into how the Alphafly 2 performs on the run. For context's sake, I am just getting back into training after a little niggle, but I couldn't resist taking the Alphafly 2 out for its maiden voyage with some fairly cruisy mile reps. Right out the gates, and as I alluded to earlier, I am a big fan of how the Alphafly 2 fits. I prefer my race shoes to be a little bit more on the snug side, but the slightly more structured variant of Atom Knit that we have here definitely seems to fit to my foot shape better, and I was very pleasantly surprised by the initial step-in feel. The increased ZoomX foam in the forefoot and reduced rubber coverage is noticeable and absolutely creates a softer underfoot experience. The Alphafly has always felt amazing to me when cruising along at a decent pace, but with the slightly more narrow nature of the original Alphafly, I did feel like I had to alter my gait slightly and land a certain way to get the most benefit. With the updates to the Alphafly 2, that wasn't necessarily the case, and I felt far less conscious of each foot strike, and overall the shoe just felt more connected. The Alphafly comes into its own when cruising at a consistently faster pace on smooth road surfaces with minimal tight corners. It has always been marketed more as a full marathon race day shoe, but with the second iteration, I feel like this use case is even more pronounced. I was running at right around 340 per K pace, which is hopefully going to be my goal marathon pace in a few months' time, and the overriding sensation is just how much more efficient and economical I feel running in the Alphafly compared to some of the other options out there on the market. Obviously, if you're like me and just regaining fitness, there's going to be a degree of aerobic strain and your legs are going to start feeling it towards the back end of those reps. However, the protective properties of the Alphafly, and indeed now the Alphafly 2, and that ability to keep pushing through the pain barrier is for me the biggest selling point of this shoe. I think that's just about going to do it for our first look and first run review of the Nike Alphafly 2 Proto. As always, let me know what you think of the updates to the shoe and whether you'll be trying to grab yourself a pair in the comments down below. As expected, this Proto edition colour drop is highly limited, so if you want to own the epitome of running shoe innovation, head over to prodirectrunning.com and secure your pair while stocks last. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more running content coming very soon. Follow us on socials at ProDirect Running for the latest running news and releases, and I'll see you next time.